Now, are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, I have put up on the first unit notes here, right? The algorithms and all. Now, if you notice, let me start from the beginning here. These are the few algorithms and the flowcharts which we have written and drawn. Okay. If you go in the sequence, try to relate these algorithms and the flowcharts with respect to the C programs. These problems require the continuous flow, right? We didn't have any type of a control statements and anything like that. So normal flow was essential in order to solve the problem. So according to that, we had written certain programs. We have solved the problems basically, and then look at these particular algorithms. Means these type of problems require us to have a change in the flow of execution, right? We need to navigate from one particular place to the other place and navigate or accordingly execute the statements. We happen to change our flow. According to that, we had written certain coding part. We have studied the C programming concepts over there, right? So the concepts which we have studied over there were the control statements. In that, the first part, the branching statements, right? So in the branching statements, we had seen if else, nested if else, and else if ladder, and the switch cases. If you notice, if you observe keenly, the common characteristic of or the common behavior of all those type of control statements is that we had one condition. Minimum, there was one condition. Whether that condition has satisfied or not, based upon the result of the condition, the program execution flow is to change either in one direction or in the multiple directions, right? It could be one-way branching or two-way branching or multi-way branching based upon the concepts what we had used and the results what we were getting based upon those conditions. The flow of execution used to deviate, or there was a change in the flow of execution. Okay, so these are the two things. One is that condition was there, and second point over is that if you notice, once the execution has done in any of the paths, assume in this case here, okay, start input n, okay, and then if that particular condition, here text is missing somehow, okay, if that particular condition is a true, if in this case it is if n is greater than 0, right? If n is greater than 0, if it is true, it will go into this positive number path and then it will complete. If the result is false, the condition is false, then it will go into the false mode and it will execute the negative number, and then the solution will be there and the program will get terminated. Okay, the observing point here is that the set of statements which gets executed either part of a true or a false, either part of this particular true block or the false blocks, they execute only once, irrespective of the result is true or a false. Okay, let me repeat it. Irrespective of the result, look at here, irrespective of this particular condition results, the corresponding true block or the corresponding false blocks will execute only once. They will not repeat it anymore. Once it is executed, part is done. Look into any of the programs or any of the control statements we have studied so far. In all those cases, the true block, either the true block or the false block will execute only once. Turn off the video part, Kirti. Turn off your video. Okay. Look into this program also, the largest of two numbers. When the condition is tested, it will result into a true or a false. Whatever the result is it true or a false, the corresponding true block or the false block will execute, and those statements will execute only once. Look into this part also, the else if ladder here. Here also, if you look into any of the paths, we have how many paths here? This is the first one. From here, they can go into a positive number and then terminate. Or you can go into a negative number and then get terminate. Or it could be a number is a 0. So all these paths will execute only once. There is no instant that any of the statements will get executed repeatedly. It is not happening in these concepts. But certain problems will be there. There will be a certain problems which require certain statements to be executed repeatedly, right? We want to execute some of the statements repeatedly until that particular condition is a true or until the condition is a false, right? Look at this one, this particular problem here, wherein we need to find out a solution which will print our name 10 times, right? We want to print our name 10 times. Corresponding to that, we had written this particular algorithm here. Okay, now if you don't want to follow this particular algorithm or the concept, how we can do? We can write our name 10 times separately, right? I can write output name, output name, output name, like 10 times I can write it here. I can get rid of this statement, and what I can say, step 3 output name, step 4 output name, step 5 output name, like that 10 times I can repeat the same statement execution, right? Now what do we think there? Is that a correct approach to do that one? Ideally not. Why? It is not the correct way to do that one, because we are doing some task. Listen carefully. We are executing certain statements, okay, which are same, which are identical. Okay, repeatedly we want to do the same execution. If I do this, if I write the same execution statements 10 times, then it is not the right way to do it. Instead of that, we can make use of certain programming concepts which will help in executing those statements multiple times, right? Instead of writing the statements multiple times, listen carefully, instead of writing statement multiple times, let me put up, this would be easy for you to understand. Let's say, take the same statement, I want to print the name, right? So let's say output, shall I use the printf statement here for your understanding? Printf, say, I want to print my name 10 times. What I can do? I can write the same thing 10 times, right? How many times happened? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 more times. Now, this way I can write what I'm doing here. I'm repeatedly writing the statements here. How many times? The 10 times. But instead of writing the same thing, what is common here? Common is the same statement is rewritten. The same statement is rewritten multiple times. Instead of doing this one, I can make use of certain concepts which will help me to do all these things if I write only once also. Okay, I will write only one statement and I will make the same statement to execute for 10 times. Make this particular statement to execute it for 10 times. So such type of control statements, we call it to be a looping control statements. We call it to be a looping control statements. These are again control statements. They will control the flow of execution. But how? Based upon particular condition, they will work. But the advantage is that it goes into looping. Sorry, spelling mistake. It goes into a looping. Looping means repeatedly execute those statements. Repeatedly execute means what? So you go and execute the same statement. It could be one or many statements repeatedly, one after the other. You keep on executing. How long? How long? Based upon that particular condition, whether it is a true or a false. Okay, it's something like I will make use of some variables wherein I will ensure that, okay, I need to print it 10 times. So first initially I will make some variables, like say there is one variable, call it to be a counter. Call it to be a counter. Say counter, I want to print it how many times? 10 times. So initially I will put it to value 1. So for the first round, you print this statement. Once it is printed one time, then I will increase this counter value to 2. I will increase the counter value to 2. Then again, I will print it. So 2 times it is printed. Then I will increase it for the 3. Then again, I will execute it. Then I will increase it for the 4th value. Then I will again execute it. Like this, I will repeat it. How long? I will repeat it from 1 to 10 times. I will repeat it from 1 to 10 times, and within that particular 1 to 10 times, I'm going to repeatedly execute one statement or multiple statement depending upon my use. Okay, once this particular condition is true, you do this one, and once the condition is false, then you skip this repeated execution and stop it. Like this way, I will make use of certain control statements, which will help in repeatedly execution of a statement or a set of statements. And such type of control statements are called as looping statements. Such type of control statements are called as looping control statements. These looping control statement was based upon certain conditions again. Until that particular condition is true, you execute those things. If it is false, don't execute. Stop it there itself. The difference between the branching and the looping is that in branching, the set of statements will execute only once. Whereas in looping, it may execute it for many times. Sometimes it may never execute also, depending upon the condition, whether it is true or false. Right? Such control statements which gets repeatedly executed are called as the looping control statements. In the looping control statements, again, we do have certain classifications. The first classification is, we call it to be the entry controlled loop or entry controlled looping, and the second one is exit controlled looping. So here entry controlled and exit controlled here, these two words talks about entry or the exit, the conditions where we put the where do we write those particular conditions in the program, that talks about the entry controlled or the exit controlled. Let us directly get into certain programs and then try to understand how it works. Okay, now entry controlled and exit controlled, let us say here, the examples, let me give the examples here. The examples for entry control loops are while loop and for loop. This while and for are keywords in C programming. And then for the exit controlled loop, the do while loop, it is called as do while loop. Do and while, these two are two different words. Do is one word and the while is other word, and both are keywords. Okay, so in C programming, the example for entry control is while and for, exit control is do while, and all these three are the type of looping controls. If you wanted me to put the complete scenario in one picture, like, give me a moment, control statements, the first classification is what? The branching control statements, and the second one is looping control statements. In the branching, we had the examples as simple if, second one is else if, third is else if ladder, and fourth is nest
Switch case.
if, and the last one is switch case, switch or switch case. Okay, and then in the second part, looping, we can have the two different types. One is the entry controlled and the exit controlled, and we have in entry controlled while loops and for loops, and then in the exit controlled we have do while loops. Students, please turn off your videos. Kirti. Okay, the difference between this branching and looping is that this branching executes, okay, one time, executes only one time. Sometime there can be a zero time also. It will never execute also, that possibility is also there. If the condition is false in the simple if, those statements will never execute. So we can call it to be a zero time also. But maximum it can execute only one time, right? Whereas in the looping, we have repeatedly execution. We can call it to be a loops or repeated execution. There can be even zero time also. Here also there can be a zero time, a particular statement or a group of statements can be executed. When the condition is false, then it will never get executed. Like that we can analyze. Okay, let us go ahead and try to understand the difference between entry control and exit control. I will take up this concept later once we study what a while loop and a for loop and the do while loop, and then we will be having a pretty much idea upon why we can categorize them into a entry control and a exit control. Okay, now I think if I explain with the diagram, that would be easy for you. Let us let me open up a paint, MS Paint. We increase the size. Okay, now assume that we need to say, let me come back to the notepad here. Say we are trying to write some code here, okay, which will print my name 10 times like that. So there will be certain statements, call it to be a statement 1, statement 2, like that. Different statements are there, and then later we come up with one particular condition. Okay, that condition will be checked whether for true or a false. The condition will be validated for true or a false. If it is true, then I need to do what? I need to execute repeatedly. Say in this case, statement, call it to be 3. Call this statement to be 4. Okay, and then we do have the remaining statements here. We do have the remaining statements. Now, just pay attention here. So program execution starts from the beginning. It comes over here. It follows from the top to bottom, and then it comes to the condition part. So now the condition will get validated. Now we assume that we have some conditions here which will work based upon the looping concepts. Based upon the looping concepts, means repeated execution. Now here, which are the statements which gets repeatedly executed? Those are which falls under the true block of this condition. How can I identify true block? After the writing the condition, there will be a pair of brackets. Within that pair of brackets, there could be statements. It could be only one statement or it could be multiple statements. Now, the flow of execution is, let me put it for better understanding as this 1, 2, 3, 4, and then let me take it off, write it to be 4, sorry, this is 5, say 6, let's say one more 7, and then there are 8, 9. Okay, assume these are the lines which we have written. And suppose if there is a looping happening, okay, how the execution will happen? Now, think here, sorry, okay, think of the conditions here. Now I need to repeat these things for say 5 times. 5 times these things have to be repeated. What are the statements have to be repeatedly executed 5 times? These are the statements 5, 6, and 7. Then flow of execution will be what? 1, 2, 3, 4. After 4, 5. Assume the condition is true. 5, 6, 7. After 7, it will not execute 8. It will not execute 8 because I need to repeatedly execute these 3 statements 5 times. So after 7, it will be again 5, 6, 7. So now, how many times I repeatedly executed? 1 time, then the second time. Okay, then again, I will repeatedly execute the same statements 5, 6, 7, 3 times over. 5, 6, 7, 4 times, then 5, 6, and 7. Now here, these 3 statements, 5, 6, 7, I repeatedly executed. Isn't it? I just looped into the things. Loop means repeatedly execute the same statements again and again and again. How many times? Since I need it to be 5 times, so 5 times I just executed. And after the 5th time is completed, then I will go to the end of this particular bracket and then I will execute 8 and 9. Now, the point we need to understand here is these statements. Look at here. What are these statements? Are they same set of statements? Yes, they are same statements which are repeatedly executed. Which are repeatedly executed. Such type of control statements, we call it to be a looping statements. Okay. Are you following this concept? It's just a simple flow I'm just explaining, but once we take up the examples and the problems, you will be able to understand them better. But here just have an how the flow will happen, the execution flow.
Odorless only hidden sound. Odorless. 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 Orderless. Yeah, order. Order.
Nikhil, turn on your audio. What are you doing, Nikhil?
Sir, I am sorry, sir. My mistake, sir.
No, you have to be sorry for that. Okay. What are you doing? Whom you are discussing?
Nothing, sir.
I know that
Nothing, sir.
been an impression that you have already studied these concepts and all. You are very much aware about the concepts, and you think you can do other steps by connecting into class and all. If you are in
No,
that
sir.
impression, what I would suggest is
No,
that
sir. No, sir.
let me complete. Let me complete. If you are in that particular
Yes, sir.
impression, no, you don't connect. Don't join the classes. You can do other steps. I'm not insisting you to join the classes.
No, sir. Sorry, sir. This is my first time I was studying the programming languages, sir. My mistake, sir. I am not going to repeat this again, sir. I am sorry.
Okay, fine.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, don't repeat it once again. Okay.
Yeah, sir. Sorry, sir.
Yes. Now, students, think here. What we're trying to understand, some statements are there. These are the some statements. We want them to be executed repeatedly. Okay. How we did that one? We wrote certain conditions here, which will help us in executing all these three statements 5 times repeatedly. In this flow, we can see 5, 6, 7 are written how many times? Only 3 times. Only once they have written 5, 6, 7. But in the execution, I can see they are being executed 5 times. So this is something we call it to be a repeated execution. If there was no repeated execution, if it is a simple branching statement, then flow will be what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After 4, assume that condition is true, then only it will go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These statements 5, 6, 7 will be executed whenever condition is true. But how many times? Only one time. Those statements will be executed only once. But whereas in the looping statement, when the condition is true, it is going to execute the same set of statements repeatedly until that particular condition is satisfied. So that's why we call the looping statement, okay, or we call it to be looping because we go into a loops again and again and again, execution of the same set of statements multiple times until and unless our given condition is true. If the condition is true, execute this. Again, if the condition is true, execute it. Repeat it until when? Until the condition becomes false. Once the condition becomes false, then don't execute these things. Come out of this particular body. Means skip all these things, then go ahead and then execute. These type of flow, control flow, we call it to be a looping control statements. As I mentioned earlier here, there are two types. One is the entry controlled, other is the exit controlled. Now, in a one line here, you can think of the controlled, this particular repeated execution is happening where? At the beginning. How can I can say beginning? Because the condition is checked before these statements. Condition is checked before this statement. If the condition is true, then only you execute. That is, I'm at the entry level, I am validating. If it is true, then only you follow. So it is entry control something. Suppose if there is something called as an exit control. Exit control means this condition will be in the later stage here. Condition will be in the later stages. There will be a set of block here. There will be a set of one particular block, and then there will be a condition. In such case, what will happen? 1, 2, 3, 4. After 4, immediately it will pick up 5, 6, 7. It will not validate any condition. After executing this 5, 6, 7, the condition will be validated. Now, if the condition is true, what will happen? It will come again and execute 5, 6, 7. Then it will check condition. If it is true, then again it will come back 5, 6, 7, it will execute. And if the condition is false, then it will not go back to 5. Rather, it will go to the 8, 9. So the place where we are checking the condition, where we are looking for the condition, if it is at the beginning, then we call it to be entry controlled. And if the condition is at the later stage, then we call it to be a exit controlled. Okay, so based upon these concepts, we are going to look into and study the looping control statements called as a while loop and a for loop as part of entry controlled, and do while loop as part of exit controlled. Okay, is this basic information understood? Did you follow through it? Okay, let us understand it more with the examples. Okay, now let us take up the first one, that is while condition. While condition. Turn off your video, Hazra. Okay, while condition. So as I said, while is a keyword. While is a keyword. The syntax of while is something like this. While, then a condition, okay, condition, and then there will be a block. What that particular block will consist of? Block will consist of the statements, or we can say the body of that particular while loop. Okay, now then these are the remaining statements. At the beginning also we can have some statements over here. Now let me know, you guys tell me, when I write here the condition, what actually we mean by this one? What type of operators we may use here? What type of expressions we may use here in this condition? When I write this syntax, while is a keyword, and in the open and close bracket within that, when I write a condition, right? What actually we mean by this condition? What type of the operation or the operators we use here? In if else, what are the conditions we use? Which operators we use? Am I audible?
Relational operators we have used.
Relational
operators. Why relational operators? Because we want to do only two things, either of the two things. One, whenever it is true, or the second is whenever it is false. If it is true, then execute these things, all these statements. When it is false, then don't execute these things. So the operator which gives us this facility, wherein the result is either a true or a false, is something called as an relational operators. So we make use of relational operators in the while condition. Okay, so in the while, the condition will always be a relational operator, which will give us a result in the form of a true or a false. Then what will happen when this condition is a true, and what will happen when this condition is a false? That is something we need to understand here. When the condition is true, means since it is a while means repeatedly execute. What I need to repeatedly execute? The corresponding block of that. What are the corresponding block here? These are the statements. So these statements I need to repeatedly execute. When this condition is true. If the condition is false, then don't at all execute any of these statements out of the while loop and then follow with these things. Whenever the condition is true, you execute this one. Once you finish with all these execution, then come back again and then check the condition once again. Even that time, if the condition is true, then again execute the statements. After executing the last statement, then again come back for the while. If it is again true, then again execute. So in this way, we keep on executing all these statements until the corresponding condition is true or not. If it is true, execute. If it is false, don't at all execute. Okay, let us see very simple example and then conclude today's class. Let me open the files. You may find it little difficult at the beginning, okay, but eventually when we keep when we write the other programs and all we solve the problems, definitely you are going to find it very simple. Okay, let us write the statements hash include stdio.h. okay, then int main. Since it is a int main, let me write the return 0 and then close it. Save the program. Let me give the file name as loop.c, or rather call it to be a while.c. Okay, now let us say, let me take, I want to print my name 10 times. Okay, let us talk about the same problem. So int I, initially I will update it with 1. I will update it with 1 value. Okay, then while I will write, and then I will be writing my corresponding block over here. Now I need to write a condition here. So while I need to print, what I need to print, I need to execute the printf statement, say my name here. Okay, I need to repeatedly execute this statement. How many times I need to execute? 10 times. I need to execute it for 10 times. Then I can correspondingly write the condition here until I is less than or equals to 10. Look at the condition what I'm trying to put here. Initial value of I is 1, and the condition what I write here is that I less than or equal to 10. So initially, what do you think? Will this particular condition be true or a false?
True.
True. If it is true, it will enter into the while loop and it will execute this statement. Since there is only one statement, after this execution is completed, it will not go here. Let me write one more statement here. Printf, okay, end of program. It will not go and print this one. Instead of that, what it will do, it will come back again and then again it will check the condition. Now, what is the, suppose first I value is 1, condition is true, it will print my name and then it will come back and then again it will check the condition. What will be the value of I now?
2.
2. How come it will be 2?
Suppose it's looping.
Did we modify this I value anywhere? We did not modify the I value. So we need to keep.
We need to increment, sir.
Yeah, we
Increment
need to
is
increment
simple,
it.
sir.
So what we need to do? We need to increment it. So I plus plus. I plus plus. Now I executed this once and then I did a I plus plus. I'm just counting it, how many times I'm going to go through it. So I plus plus means next time when you use the I value, you increment it by 1. So earlier, initially I was 1, it printed my name and then I plus plus means it becomes 2 here. Next time when I compare this value, this particular condition, now I is 2, 2 less than 10. Is the condition true? Yes, condition is true. Then it will execute this statement, means it will print my name and then I plus plus. So I plus plus after this one, again it will come and then validate the condition. Here I value will be what now? I value will be 3. So is that 3 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is true. Then again what it does, it goes through the same steps. Okay, it keeps on repeating the same thing until I becomes 10 now. Now when I becomes 10, I less than or equal to 10, that is 10 less than or equal to 10, it is true. So for the 10th time, it will display my name and then I will get incremented to 11. Now I will become 11. So the next time when it is coming to the while loop, here I value is 11 now. Is that 11 less than or equal to 10? Now what happens? The condition becomes false. When the condition becomes false, what will happen? It will skip these statements and it will proceed with the next statement execution. Now look at here. What I have done is that I have used only one statement to print. I have written only once, but made use of the while loops, which has helped me in repeatedly execution of this statement 10 times. 10 times. Let us see if I execute this one, what is going to happen. CD, go to
Sir,
folder,
there is a mistake, sir. Return spelling.
return spelling. Oh, correct. Return, yes. Then let's go and then compile the program. Yes. So no errors now. Run the program. Look at here. Exactly 10 times the statement has been executed. And then there is a end of the program. Right? Now, suppose here I will change this to only 5. What will happen? It is going to execute it for 5 times. If I compile now and then run the program, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times the same statement is executed and then there is a end of the program. Okay. Now look at here one more. If I make it to be like this, I less than or equals to 0. Now what will be the condition? Is it a true or a false?
False, sir.
False. Then if it is a false, what is expected? Should it go
The program.
while loop and then execute, or should it skip?
End of the program will be printed, sir.
Yes, only end of the program. When the condition become false, it will not enter the while loop. It will skip it. Okay, let us check here what is going to happen. Compile and then run the program. It has skipped here. It did not execute that particular statement. Rather, only the end of program is executed. Okay, now suppose if I don't write this statement, that is I plus plus if I don't do, and let this condition be like this 5, I less than or equal to 5. Theoretically, understand here what is going to happen. I have commented this line. Okay, initially I is 1, 1 less than 5, less than or equal to 5. Condition is true, it will execute this line. Then again it will come back and check the condition. What is the I value? It is again 1. We have not modified it. So again 1 less than or equal to 5, it is true, it will execute. Again it will come and check the condition. 1 less than or equal to 5 condition is true. Again it will print. So this will go into, it will go and go and go on until infinite time, because there is no condition which will make this statement to be false. Right? In such cases, if I execute, look at here what is going to happen. It is printing infinitely. There is no end for that one. We can see here it started printing n times. I'm just scrolling it up. It's still printing infinitely. It keeps on printing, right? So if you encounter such things, we have to forcefully close it by pressing Control and C button together. Okay, what I need to do, I need to press Control button and C button together. When I do that, the execution will stop. Okay, we need to take care about the conditions in the while loop, because in these while loops and the control statements which are a looping type, the statements are going to be executed repeatedly. Okay, we need to take care of the conditions such a way that at a particular time the condition should become false. If it doesn't happen, then each statements will keep on executing multiple times. That multiple time here, it would be the infinite times. It will keep on executing the statements. So if we remove these comments, and if I can handle here, so the condition will become false when I is 6. When I becomes 6, the condition will become false and the program will come out of that while loop and then print the end of the program. Did you understood something here? If you understood something out of this while loop in the first program, that would be that would be appreciable, right? Since it is the first program on the looping statements, if you just got to know how the looping happens, what does mean by the looping and all, that would be enough. That is the enough learning out of this particular class. Okay, in detail again we will look into it, how to trace the looping and all. There is something called as a tracing of the program. Tracing of the program means we need to find out the flow of the execution, how it is happening, for what type of the values of the variables, how the program is executing, how it is behaving and all. Okay, we will study it as part of tracing. Okay, that we will start doing from the next class onwards. Okay, is it understood, student, as of now? Any difficulties, any doubts?
No, sir.
If there
No,
are,
sir.
please do ask. Otherwise, I will have to assume that you are understanding the concepts. Right? So, just to summarize this thing, what we have studied is the looping control statements. Looping control statements are something which goes into the loops. What we mean by loops means repeated execution of some statements will happen. It could be one statement or many statements. This repeated execution can be zero also. How it can be zero? Whenever the condition is false, it is not going to execute, not even once, right? Then the classification here, we have two classification. One is the entry controlled, other is the exit controlled. This classification is made where we are placing the condition. Is it at the beginning? If so, we call it to be entry controlled. If it is not at the beginning, means it is at the ending side, then we call it to be a exit controlled. And the examples for them, for the entry controlled, while loops and for loops. And for the exit control, it is do while loop. It is do while loop. And all these are the keywords: while, for, do. Okay, are the keywords in C programming. Understood, students?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.